Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for How Do I Know It's Sunday, released in 1934. It's the 82nd in the series and it's directed by Friz Freleng. You can find an unrestored version of this on the Looney Tunes Gold Collection Volume 6 DVD set. I believe it was like a bonus cartoon that they threw in because they knew that was going to be the last volume. Now, in case you haven't seen this one, well, not really much happens. We just see a store that's closed on Sundays, and things now come to life. In this case, it's a whole bunch of grocery items, or mascots, and after some shenanigans, we then see some flies invade, and we get a final battle, and it just ends. So, it's a formula that they would use quite a bit in Harmon-Ising days, and since Friz Freleng worked with Harmon-Ising, it makes sense for him to continue here. I'm not going to put the original commentary on this one because there wasn't really much that I said there that I thought added value to this review, but I'll go through this short, and then after that, because this is a music themed short, my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tanner, will go through the musical part of it. So let's take a look at this short. So, to put things into context, so this looks like it just takes place in small town USA, and I would imagine not just in USA, but even here in Australia, there are still those small towns where it's small enough where you can pretty much close everything on a Sunday and it's pretty much to go to church. And you can see that right in the beginning. Although I do have to question the scale of that church. It looks like it's too small or the people too big. Am I seeing things? Let me know in the comments if you think this is the correct scale or if you're just a little bit off. Is it a big deal? No, but it just stood out to me. So we see the store, and yeah, it's closed on a Sunday. And in small towns, you can imagine that everyone would close things down. Some places would be probably just for the morning, just so they can go to church and do their spiritual healing or whatever they want to do. And they may reopen in the afternoon, but typically Sundays is just a day of fun. And boy, oh boy, it'd be nice to return to that. I don't really like working Sundays. It would be nice if things were like this. But anyway, so the song itself, and Manny will go through the actual song in a bit more detail, but it does come from a movie called Harold-Teen, which came out in 1934, and that itself was based off a comic strip. And there was also another film, 1928 silent movie of the same name. The strip itself has long been forgotten, but it was actually quite popular at the time. It was like an adolescent type strip, and there was like a soda shop. I've only seen a few strips just to get an idea of it, and it was basically discontinued once the author of the strip passed away, so it's definitely not exactly in people's minds these days, unlike, say, Peanuts or Garfield and that sort of thing. I'm going to go through a lot of the references that I was able to find out or I already knew in relation to some of these grocery items, but keep in mind that some of these are so bleak and you miss it that I've probably forgotten a few. There are a few I couldn't figure out, but that's where you guys come in. If I miss something, or if I make a mistake, or if I just plain don't know something, let me know. And it's not just for my benefit, it's for everyone's benefit. Let's put all the knowledge together. Now, seeing Anchor sardines, I couldn't find a direct reference to that because there were a few sardine brands, from what I've seen, some of the images that would have an anchor on it, so it could be very much any of them. But if you do know of an Anchor brand, let me know. But I can see that in some markets today that there is a brand called Anchor sardines, but I just think that's just a coincidence in this particular case. I do have to wonder why the sardines are still alive in that tin. Yeah, go figure. And you can also barely hear that pig sing as well, and the sardines seem very disgusted with this pig. I think they should have done another retake, but it could be just the audio quality. It was just a pig just muttering something, but anyway. Of course, we get a nice little dad joke with the pickled herrings, which to be pickled means to be drunk and all that. Now, finally, I found something that I do know. So pink ribbon malt is a reference to blue ribbon malt extract, which even had the same lady in front, similar to the ladies that you see in that particular scene. And I should mention as well, I'm not going to go into massive histories of each and every product. I figure I'll identify them, I'll show the image, and then if you want to know further some of these details, definitely take a look at it through Google or whatever. I will say that the potato with many eyes is pretty creepy, and of course, the joke is the onions nearby and making this potato cry. That's someone who cuts up a lot of onions, cooking for the kids and all that. Yeah, I feel that. I definitely do. And all the veggies are just so angry, calling him a so-and-so, and he should be in a stew and all that. In fact, this particular song, How to Know It's Sunday, it had different lyrics, but in this short, they twisted it around to suit whatever's on the screen, in this case, the veggies. So we have one image here which may put off some people just the way they're drawn, but there is a basis in these two products. So you've got Aunt Eliza's reference to Aunt Jemima's pancake mix. So that one most people should know because that product was still sold, and I think up until recently they decided they didn't want to do that anymore. No, I'm not going to get into all of that complicated mess of the product, but that's what it is. And to the right is a reference to cream of wheat, and it really did have an African-American man on the box known as Rastus, and that's a very interesting rabbit hole to go down to, by the way, so if you got time, definitely look that up. And they basically used an image of Rastus on one of their advertising campaigns, where he's basically a former slave, and the ad depicts him as illiterate, so I'll leave that to you guys to look up, but it was definitely interesting. So we see you want a crackers. That's a reference to you need a biscuit. That's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, it's a pretty typical joke, right? And yeah, we then see Tamales sing a Mexican song. What else are Tamales going to do, really? But I do think it's clever that they picked up a nearby fork and they start playing it like a guitar. That's pretty good. Although Manny does have an interesting thing to say about the way that these guys, the Varsity 3, sing the song. Now, why does the Old Maid cleanser have Dutch women on them? It seems kind of weird. You'd think they might have just regular Old Maids, right? That's because they reference a brand called Old Dutch Cleanser. So that's the reason why they have Dutch women dancing to that song. And Searchlight Cleaner is a reference to Lighthouse Cleanser. So I don't know, them probably in direct competition or something. We see on the fan various mascots like Mr. Peanut and the Argo cornstarch mascot, that Indian in a corn suit. I do like how the devil character, I'm not sure where he's from, but he just decides to be a jerk and just turn on the fan really fast. And if you can name some of these other mascots, definitely let me know, because a lot of them really did not come out here in Australia, so I'm really not familiar. And some of them are probably obscure, that they may have only come out in certain markets anyway in the United States. Then we have Threaded Wheat. That's a play on shredded wheat, which the box is about the same too, with the actual image there. Jabbo, I think it's a reference to Drano. I can't find anything else relating to it. It just feels like, hey, Jabbo, Drano. The ads look kind of similar, so I'm assuming that's it. But yeah, let me know if there's some other obscure product that was something O. Now, I can't see the whole coffee can to confirm what it is, but I think it's for Maxwell Coffee House, because that is slogan good to the last drop. And the full thing is probably Outhouse Coffee anyway, so yeah. That's probably one way to get out of the Hays Code, which would have come into full effect by now. We have, in very bleak and missed moments, Pratt's Dog Biscuits. That's a parody of Sprat's Dog Biscuits. Duck Down Cake Flour is a parody of Swan's Down Cake Flour. And I believe we have our first Frizz Freeling background item. I'm not sure what it is, but we see Frizz there. And this background's repeated a few times as the main character, I'm assuming it's the main character, coming down the toilet paper. Now, you guys can let me know what Toyland Cookies is referencing. I'm not sure. I tried looking it up, and I tried every sorts of variations. I just honestly don't know. There was Toll House Cookies by Nestle, but I don't think that's it. What I do know is that Animal Cookies is a reference to animal crackers, so that one's pretty obvious. So then we see our villains. 4 minutes into this short, and we're getting to our last third here, but it's a whole bunch of flies, which, to be fair, I like that it's a little bit different than the previous ones where you got the one villain that just comes out of nowhere. Here it makes sense because a lot of the older buildings wouldn't have had fly screens. Fly screens were around, but you can imagine the smaller towns like this in the older buildings wouldn't have had them, and they wouldn't have had air conditioning and that sort of stuff. Because we're talking about small town here. And yeah, I love the whole Sneezo black pepper and loaf of bread. And we also see Frizz is a salad dressing. So this tells me that maybe some of the stuff in the background, the reason I couldn't find them is because some of them are just made up. So I doubt that there would have been a loaf of bread brand, but then again, I could be surprised. And yes, we do see a Russian dance after they eat Russian rye. I mean, what else are you going to do in a gag like that, right? What else are you going to do? Sunnyside raisins could be referencing to Sun-made raisins. I can't make out the other products here due to the SD quality compression, and this is something that will need to be restored in HD. I think it was just off the shelf and they just gave it a quick tidy and they just chucked it on that set. But hey, it's better than nothing, right? Kelly's cornflakes, that's easily a reference to Kellogg's cornflakes, and the other stuff in that shot appears to be generic. We have JBM coffee, that I believe is a reference to Jamaica Blue coffee, and that's the closest thing I could find. Again, if you know more than me about that, let me know. And then we see vinegar instead of vinegar, but apparently there is a real thing called spirit vinegar or wine vinegar. So I don't know if that was meant to be a parody or unintentionally or whatever, but yeah, it was just something I had a look. When researching this is, yeah, sorry kids, I can't play with you. I'm researching history of vinegar. Norm soda crackers, I don't know. I try to find it. Let me know in the comments if you know that one. We then see our character making a clear reference to Tarzan, doing the Tarzan yell, and keep in mind the whole film series was becoming really popular at this time. It was originally books, then there was some silent features, but it was really the 30s features that the character really took off in film. Frit is a play on Flit bug spray, and just a little side note, unlike today we got the aerosol cans, but back then you had to also have a manual hand sprayer, and Flit had their own, so you basically load up the sprayer with this liquid and then you just spray around. I'm not sure who the Arrow mascot is, but I think Idaho Blue End Matches appears to be a play on Ohio Blue Tip Matches, which indeed had blue tips on the end of the matches instead of red. And I love the Burno can. I'm not sure on the chip packet, it looks a little bit too faded for me to see and look it up. But of course, I'm going to do my Simpsons reference here. Best in the West. Hehe, that rhymes. I'm not sure on the Almonte toothpicks, and we have the magic safety pins, and you'd think maybe, safety pins might have been a new thing, but no, it was around since 1800s, so maybe it's a novelty thing here, I don't know, but it was definitely something that I couldn't see if there was a brand called Magic Safety Pins or whatever. One I do know is Harmon-Ising baking soda. That's a play on Arm & Hammer baking soda, and it's a nice little gag with the hammer there, and that bit of animation would end up being reused in a few shorts as well. I like how Mr. Peanut looks so serious and determined when he's releasing all those bottles, which I think, if it's wine, I think it's wine. I'm sure that would make probably the fire worse, but whatever. It's just a cartoon, right? Then we have Lily White Cleaner, and I like that spelled Lily, Lally. That's the same name as my daughter, same spelling. And that's a reference to White Lily Cleanser. Garrow Syrup is a play on Caro, Karo, corn syrup. And Tarnation Milk is a play on Carnation Evaporated Milk. And as we get to the end, we see a corn syrup and popcorn mixture when the good guys vanquish our villains here. And sure enough, popcorn balls were a real thing, and they were a real thing that was sold. I didn't know that, so maybe I'll try that. I'll find one of those old-time recipes and give it a go. And Besto toilet tissue, that seems to be a play on Bronco toilet paper. Again, some of these might be a little stretch, but it seems like it. And then, yeah, the flies end up getting trapped, although the main character seems to have taken a while to block the bottle. I would have thought at least a few flies would have escaped, but whatever. The flies are trapped. Our hero vanquishes all the villains. Yay! Now I've prattled on long enough, so my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, he's going to go through the music in this short as it is promoting a song. So take it away, Manny.
Hi everyone, this is Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, coming at you with the latest edition of It's Time for Manny's Music Time, with music trivia for you today. Bum! With the 1934 Merry Melody, How Do I Know It's Sunday, directed by Isidore Freeling, or as we know him better as Friz Freeling. I'm recording this on a Sunday night. It's almost midnight here, so it's still technically Sunday, so sadly I will not complete this recording by Sunday. It'll be done sometime early Monday morning, but I promise I won't take that long. So let's talk about the musical cues in this one, shall we? So for this cartoon, it starts off with the Merry Melodies theme, I Think You're Ducky, and it segues into the title track, How Do I Know It's Sunday? Well, I don't know. How do I know? I checked the calendar, but I'll be here all week, folks. Try the veal. Thank you very much. And I'll stop now. So, How Do I Know It's Sunday was composed by Sammy Fine and Irving Cahal, and it comes from a 1934 film called Harold Teen. Harold Teen was actually an adaptation of a comic strip of the same name. If you want to learn a little bit more about the songwriting team of Sammy Fine and Irving Cahal, please listen to the commentary to One Step Ahead of My Shadow that I recorded for Anthony a while back. And you hear that cue throughout the cartoon in different variations, different characters sing it. This is another one of the inanimate objects, books, grocery items come to life. Warner Brothers did it all the time. You got September in the Rain, you have book review, you have I Like Mountain Music, you have the Tashlin trilogy that he did. Speaking of the weather, have you got any castles?
How do we know it's Sunday? We slept till almost after 1.
Usually, son of a gun.
Yeah, yeah. How do I know you love me? You say such crazy things you do.
You know I do.
How do you know he's sincere? I wouldn't be that Herring's wife. He's been pickled all his life.
Warner Brothers got into a formula when it came to these particular types of cartoons, and I've always found them to be pretty charming. To each his own. After you hear a little bit of How Do I Know It's Sunday, there's a brief little snippet where I couldn't find a specific name of the song, where you had the Tamales, that Los Tamales Mexicanos, the Mexican tamales, were singing and using a fork as an acoustic guitar. I don't know if that was a variation of the melody of How Do I Know It's Sunday. I don't think so. What I will say is that even though the singers, I believe it was the Varsity 3 that sang that particular part. I don't have Keith Scott's book in front of me, but I believe that if I remember reading, that was a Varsity 3 that were the tamales. Beautiful voices, but their Spanish diction leaves much to be desired. Corazon, in particular, it's corazón. In Spanish, the Z is pronounced like an S. The Spanish diction needed a little bit of work.
Ay, tamalita mía, mi corazón. Ay, chiquita mía, mi alma.
And then, of course, you have the scene of the lobster, his claws acting like castanets, reminiscent of music from Spain. And I've seen that particular clip of the lobster doing his thing in other cartoons. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but that animation is going to get a lot of mileage in the 30s. Later on, you hear a little bit of Ach du lieber Augustine or O du lieber Augustine, depending on where you read it. It's Oh you dear Augustine. And that's the scene where you have the Dutch cleaners coming out and they are dancing in time to the song on their clogs. And I did a little digging. I didn't want to do too much because I don't want to make this video super long. But O du lieber Augustine is usually a melody. It's a melody that we associate with Germany or German characters. I know, in particular, some of the World War II propaganda shorts use that melody in a humorous musical way of lampooning our enemies at the time during World War II, the Nazi forces. But in this cartoon, I thought it was interesting that they use that melody for Dutch characters. Now, the song itself, Ach du lieber Augustine, is a Viennese song, actually, and it dates back to the 1600s. But I thought it was interesting that Bernard Brown, who was the music director in this cartoon, decided to use that as a backdrop for Dutch characters. Now, our buddy Fox and the Fix is Dutch himself, so maybe when he listens to this, maybe he could find a correlation I couldn't find, me, the silly American that I am. And later on in the cartoon, you hear a little bit of Those Were Wonderful Days, which was another Merry Melody short that I talked about not too long ago. Those Were Wonderful Days was written by Murray Mencher. He wrote the music and the lyrics. I actually didn't know this the last time, but it was a co-collaboration between Charles Tobias and Jack Skoll, or School, C-S-H-O-L-L. Let's go Skoll. And Murray Mencher and Charles Tobias, I'll definitely be talking about them more once we get into 1935 with Billboard Frolics. That's in the scene where the champagne bottles start popping to the music, and you have the characters on the fan trying to collect the brass ring. You later hear, by a waterfall, I'm think of you. That's another composition by Sammy Fine and Irving Cahal. That one's going to get a lot of mileage. It's already gotten a lot of mileage. But that's a song that's originally from the 1933 film Footlight Parade, which I've talked extensively about in previous commentaries.
All I'm calling you. We can share it all beneath the ceiling of blue.
Then the next cue that you hear is called The Chatterer. And it was a composition from 1912 written for violin and piano by a composer named George John Trinkhaus. Trinkaus. I'm going to say Trinkhaus. And that's when the bugs start entering the store and they start messing around with things and they start to eat the bread. And through the power of Russian rye, they start doing a Russian dance. Hey! As they eat the bread. I've never had Russian rye bread. I've had rye bread, but not a Russian variety, so who knows? I went to Russia 15 years ago, and I didn't eat any rye bread, so can't report on that. That was a great trip. I went to St. Petersburg and Moscow for 10 days with the chamber choir of my undergrad, where I went to undergrad. And another composition from George Trinkhaus is pretty much takes up the majority of the ending of the cartoon. It's a piece called The Hummingbird. It's another piece written for violin and piano. Pretty much the battle between the grocery store inhabitants and the bugs. The final cue, that one takes up almost 2 minutes of the entire cartoon. Bernard Brown was like, you know what, this sounds like good battle music. Let's go with it. And I was trying to find information on George Trinkhaus because on the cue sheet it said G Trinkhaus, and I'm like, what's the G for? I assumed it was George or Greg or whatever, so I had to do some digging around, and it took a little while for me to find some info on him. Who was George Trinkhaus? So this information comes from the Appalachian State University Library, and they actually have a collection of his stuff, the George J. Trinkhaus Collection. And I quote from the website, George John Trinkhaus was an American composer and violinist. Trinkhaus was born April 13th, 1878, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and is a cousin of John Philip Sousa, who composed such works as Stars and Stripes Forever and Semper Fidelis. So, if you don't know who John Philip Sousa is, he's definitely a big wig in American music history, especially if you love marches. And I continue reading from the website, and I quote, he graduated from the Yale School of Music. In addition to composing music, he was the first violinist in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. In 1914, Trinkhaus, along with his good friend Victor Herbert, helped founded the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, or better known as ASCAP. Trinkhaus was married twice. His first wife, Jane Trinkhaus, died in 1951. They had 3 children together. His second wife was Caroline Lentz Trinkhaus. He died on May 19th, 1960 in Ridgewood, New Jersey, unquote. And Ridgewood is about 40 minutes north of where I live. Now, when I was reading this article, I actually did remember when I was doing some research on John Philip Sousa a while back that he had a relative, I believe his mother, her name was Maria Elizabeth Trinkhaus. And that last name, from when I read it, it's of German descent. Because actually, Sousa is John Philip Sousa. He's actually of German and Portuguese heritage, because I remember years ago when I saw his last name was like Sousa, that looks like a last name, a Portuguese last name, because I grew up with a lot of friends in my hometown that are Portuguese descendants, and my sister-in-law is actually Portuguese. But Trinkhaus definitely sounded German to me. But yeah, it looks like John Philip Sousa and George Trinkhaus were cousins from Sousa's mother's side of the family. And I'm assuming his mother and George Trinkhaus's father were cousins, or who knows. Yeah, I'm assuming they were cousins. But apparently this is going to turn into Manny's genealogy talk, so watch out, Anthony, we're going to take over. So it was a little interesting. It was a little hard to read. And actually, for the dates of the compositions of The Hummingbird and the Chatterer, I had to find information on a Dutch version of Wikipedia. I know Wikipedia is not the best source, but it was the only place I could find information. And thank goodness for Google Translate, so I could have read the article. Next time, if I run into any Dutch information, Fox, I'm hitting you up, buddy, because you got to help me out here. So, those are my thoughts and Manny's music time for How Do I Know It's Sunday. I just completed recording this around 12:04 a.m. on Monday, so not too bad. So thanks again for listening, folks. Have a wonderful day or night in my case. Keep on learning about music, and please follow me on social media at the Toony Tenor, at TheToonyTenor for more music and more multifaceted geek stuff. So let's see if I remember how the main character, the Inuit, who was actually voiced by Bernard Brown. Thank you, Keith Scott, for saying that. But I hope everybody has a great time, and so long, folks. I think that's what he did. I don't know. It's a long night. Bye, friends.
So long, folks.
Thank you, Manny. After all of that, is this a great short? It's not bad. It is what it is. And yeah, all the stuff I reference and Manny references, you don't need to know all that stuff to enjoy this short. But it's fun. It's a nice little short. I don't mind these things coming to life shorts. They're just not among my favorites, except for maybe book review and shorts like that. This one gets a 6 out of 10. It's fine. Got a few nice little gags. It's got some dad jokes, which is always welcome in my book. Nice little animation. Great timing by Frizz. Yeah. If you have a chance to watch it, either do it via the Golden Collection, but I'm sure if you look very hard, you can find it online in other avenues. So, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.